Shelton with Coalmarch, and today we're going to talk about the question of how much should I be spending on marketing. In this video, I'm going to show you how to definitively calculate how much you should be spending on marketing based on your growth goals. I'm also going to show you how to stop wasting money on advertising, and I'm going to show you how to have absolute clarity on what is happening with your marketing in terms of both efficacy as well as efficiency. And like most things, like all of us want to do, I'm going to show you how to squeeze out every bit of growth from your advertising budget so that you can make sure that anytime you're spending money on marketing, you get the absolute maximum value you can possibly get out of it with every dollar that you spend. So with that, I'm going to open up this video by a quote by John Wanamaker, who is known as the pioneer of modern marketing. John Wanamaker once said, "Half the money I spend on advertising is wasted. The trouble is, I just don't know which half." So now that was back in his day. In this day and age, there's absolutely no excuse for not knowing what is happening with your marketing. We live in a day and age where everything is tracked. Technology makes tracking easy. You can automate the tracking. Things that in the past that you could never track, like branding and awareness, even that now can be tracked. With the advent of artificial intelligence, along with all the automated tracking and technology that we have, the fact is that we're even get to a point now where based on what we present to a consumer, we can actually start predicting their behavior. So, when you think about your business and you think about you trying to understand how much money it's going to take for you to spend in marketing, the very first step to all of this, and I'm going to talk a lot about this in the video, but everything that you see in terms of numbers that we're going to cover in this video makes one assumption that you're actually tracking your marketing on the back end. So the main thing here is that not tracking your marketing can really lead to you wasting a lot of money on marketing that doesn't work. And of course, we don't want that. So with that, the big question remains is that even with all the tools and technology available, why is it that there's a lot of service company owners who are confused on exactly what they should be spending on marketing? Oftentimes I get this question in conferences. I get it, I get folks who call me. They really don't understand exactly what they should be spending in order to hit their growth goals. Usually this is because they don't have the infrastructure in place for automated tracking, or they got the infrastructure in place, but they can't make sense of the data. And so they don't really understand how each marketing channel is performing. And of course, there's always this fear aspect of where, the owner's really afraid of wasting money on marketing. They've been burned, doing a few other things that didn't work. And of course, that will result in them either not achieving their growth goals or not achieving their profit goals. And so in this segment, I'm going to show you how to grow your business, and I'm going to show you how to exactly determine how much you should be spending on marketing. That way you can know upfront exactly how much it's going to cost and how much you're going to need to invest. And the nice thing about this method that I'm going to show you is that it puts you right in the driver's seat of growing your business, right? You'll be able to grow your business at a rate that you want. You may be more profit focused, which is fine. You may be more growth focused. But when you get done and you understand this method of budgeting for marketing, you are absolutely going to be in the driver's seat and driving the growth of your business and doing it in a way that is very, very predictable. So the question is just how do you determine how much you should be spending on marketing? Well, there's a couple of different methods of doing so. And if you have been around in business, I don't know, I'd say more than a couple of years, most people do what's called the percent of revenue method, right? And in fact, the U.S. Small Business Administration, they recommend that you spend 7 to 8% of your budget on marketing. Okay, that's called the percent revenue method. And basically all that method says is that, hey, if I'm making $1 million in revenue, right? If I take 8% of that $1 million, then 80K is my marketing budget. This is what it should be. That's all this method says, right? Pretty simple, pretty standard. I think most folks have seen this, right? So all you're doing is you're just taking a percentage of your overall revenue, gives you a dollar amount. That's what you should budget for marketing. Now, there are a few pros of this method. Number one is you can see that took us about every bit of 3 seconds to figure out. All we did was take a percent of revenue. And it's pretty simple, right? That's another pro. But there is a lot of cons with this method. In fact, I would say this is the absolute wrong way of figuring out your marketing budget if you're trying to grow your business and if you really want to know what's happening with your marketing, right? Because the problem with this method is that it says nothing of your marketing efficiency. you really are constrained as well, because if you got to think about it, let's just say, for example, I wanted to grow my business by 20%. So at the end of the year, I want my business to be 1.2 million. Okay, that's pretty simple. Here's the problem. Well, number one, am I 100% certain that this 80K can actually generate an additional $200,000 in revenue? Now, if you're in a recurring business, you also have to make up cancels. And so this whole thing has no tie at all. Your budget has zero tie back to your goals. And so, maybe the 80K can generate, 200, 300K, whatever it takes to get you to 1.2 million. Maybe it won't. Again, I'm just using round numbers here just to make it very, very simple to follow. But the whole point of it is that using this method, there really is no tie for you to know that if you've got enough budget to actually hit this goal. And so there's no tie between your revenue goal and no tie between what your marketing budget needs to be in order to get you there. And so while this method is very, very easy to understand, it's very, very easy to calculate, it's not the best method for really understanding what it's going to take for you to hit your growth goals. And so the question remains is there a way that I can know how much I need to spend on marketing that almost guarantees that I'll hit this growth goal? And of course, the answer to that question is yes. And it requires a little bit more math. There is a second method. And this is called the marketing efficiency method. And as you can imagine, this is my favorite method of figuring out how we should be budgeting. Again, it requires a little bit more math, but the nice thing about this method is that your growth goal is directly tied to your marketing budget, and you can show mathematically exactly how that's going to work. And you're almost guaranteed that you're going to hit your growth goal. So, think about this for a moment. Instead of just, okay, well, I've got this in my budget, and then hopefully I will make my goal. Now you know for certain with math that you absolutely are going to hit your goal. So the other nice thing about this method is that you can maximize the effectiveness of your marketing dollar, because you know exactly what's going on in each channel. You know exactly which each marketing channel is pulling back in terms of dollars and ROI back to your business. And it allows you to drive the business at a pace that's comfortable for you, right? So if you are a person who is very aggressive in growth, you know what it's going to take in terms of investment. You can line those investments up well before the season starts. If you have a seasonal business, you can get additional funding and you can go, just as fast as you want to go. Or if you're a more conservative person, you want to make sure you preserve profit. You can know at least, how much it's going to take for you to make that profit number, and then what you can expect in terms of growth. And so I will tell you, this method is used by multiple companies. We use it personally at Triangle. We use it at Coalmarch, and most of our clients use this method as well. So having said that, to calculate what your marketing budget should be based on this method, you really only need to know two numbers. The first one is your cost per lead, and the second one is your cost per sale. And I will write these out because my handwriting is so fabulous. I know that's what you're thinking. At least that's what I'm thinking. So this is your cost per lead. This is your cost per sale. And if you have these two numbers, you can easily get to what your budget should be, right? But before we get into this, and I promise I'm not trying to insult anyone's intelligence by doing this, but it's always in the assumptions that you can get yourself into trouble. And so when I talk about a lead, at least for the purposes of this video, I bet if you went and asked 10 different owners what a lead is, you would probably get 10 different answers. And so we're going to keep this definition simple for this video. And I do want to define it, because when I'm talking about cost per lead, I want to make sure that you understand exactly what I'm saying. So a lead is nothing more than an opportunity to sell one of your services. Now, that seems simplistic, and it is. But the issue is that it doesn't get so simple when you start battle testing this, right? So the first thing is someone calls you, they email you, they want a service, that's a lead, right? If a current customer contacts you for an additional service, that's also a lead. Some folks don't calculate that as a lead. It is a lead, right? If someone asks you for a price and you give it to them and then they hang up, that's also a lead. They had an interest in your service, okay? If someone calls and requests a service that you don't offer, well, that's not a lead, at least not for the purposes of this discussion. Some folks may use that as part of the calculation, some may not. We personally don't. We only use leads that we can actually service. So that's a lead defined. Again, not trying to insult anyone's intelligence, but I promise you, if you ask this question to multiple business owners, you will get different answers. So getting back to kind of these two numbers and calculating what your budget should be, your cost per sale, right? I'm going to define this. This is nothing more than what it costs you to acquire customers, right? And the reason it's really important to know this number is because, if you were going to go out, let's just take, for example, let's say you had a company on the market for $1 million, and you bought it at 3x revenue. So now the sales price is $3 million. And let's just say their average recurring account value is $500. Well, if you paid 3x for that, that means your cost per sale in this case was $1,500. It's going to take you 3 years to recoup what you paid for that account, just to break even. Okay, so this cost per sale number is nothing more than acquisition cost that it takes for you to acquire a customer. And that's an important number to know, because the reality of it is that at the end of the day, your business is nothing more than an investment. Cost per sale allows you to evaluate what the ROI is, what your ROI is in your customer acquisition. And I can tell you that marketing is by far one of the cheapest ways to acquire customers. Now, depending on where you live and depending on what you got going on, it may not be the fastest way to acquire customers. There's no doubt if you go out and purchase a company, instantly you have, maybe 1,000 sales, 2,000, 5,000, 10,000 sales immediately, but you're going to pay heavily for it. So it's really important to know what your acquisition cost is. And if you take nothing else from this video, this cost per sale is the most important marketing number that drives your business. It's a number that you absolutely need to know, and you need to know it per channel. So we're going to get more into cost per sale maybe in later videos, but for now, the main point I want you to take away is that you absolutely must know what your cost per sale is, because again, your business is nothing more than an investment, and cost per sale is a measure of how well that investment is performing. So now the question becomes, is how do you calculate cost per sale? Well, there's multiple ways of doing it. I think for this video, we're going to keep it very simple. I'm going to keep it very marketing related. You can add things to it like sales cost. You can add infrastructure cost. Again, for this, we're going to just keep the sales commissions out for now. We're going to keep sales costs out for now. You can add that back in later. I just want to keep this simple just to explain the concept, to show you how to tie this back to your budget so that you know how much you should be spending on marketing. So to get CPS, the first thing you need to determine is what your cost per lead is. You also need to know what your conversion rate is. And so I'm going to put this off to the side. CR stands for conversion rate. And it's a pretty simple calculation, right? Once you know your CPL and you know your conversion rate, then getting your CPS is pretty straightforward. And the formula goes like this. All right, so I'm going to leave this definition up here. Your CPS is equal to your cost per lead divided by your conversion rate, okay? And again, cost per sale, cost per lead, and then conversion rate. And conversion rate is nothing more than your won leads divided by your total leads. Oh my goodness, I'm just having so much fun here on the whiteboard. There we go. Again, not rocket science here. I'm sure this is probably something everyone knows, but again, it's really important that you understand what that number is. So I'm going to do a quick example just to show you how this works. Let's assume for a moment, we're going to find CPS. Let's assume for a moment that your marketing cost is $100,000, okay? And let's assume for that $100,000, your total leads are 1,500. I can see that you already like my handwriting. And of your total leads, let's just say that you won 600 of those. So first thing I would need to do is I would need to calculate what is my conversion rate. So in this case, what I would do for my CR is I would take 600 and I would divide it by 1500. And that would roughly give me a conversion rate of 40%. Now I've got all the components that I need in order to calculate what my cost per sale is. But before I can do that, I need to understand what my cost per lead is. And so I'm going to take, this is my CPL calculation. I'm going to take what I spent on marketing. In this case, it's $100,000. Okay. And then I'm going to divide that by the total number of leads that I have, which is 1,500 leads. Okay. That turns out to be $66.67. Okay. Now my cost per sale is my CPL divided by my conversion rate. And this is the key number to know. Okay. So my CPS in this case is going to be $66.67 divided by 0.40, right? Which ultimately ends up with a CPS of 166.68. Now, why is this number important? This number tells you, remember how when I talked about if you acquired a company, you would pay $1,500 cost per sale? What this is telling you is that for every time you sell an account, this is what you're paying for that account. Now, if you have an annual revenue of say $500 on a recurring account and it's costing you $166, well, what do? Well, you start investing more money into marketing. If, for example, you say, hey, listen, I'm not really interested in, month one, I want to be profitable on the account. And again, remember, I'm not including sales costs into this. Then what you could say is, well, I want to keep this number under my initial service price. So if you have an initial service that's worth, let's just say you charge $200 for your initial service. That means day one, you're going to be making $40 every sale that you generate at this number. And so this cost per sale is a very key number to know because this allows you to know I should be increasing my marketing budget or I should be decreasing it. And I'm going to tie this back in a moment to show you how to forecast over the year. But again, most critical number to know in marketing is your CPS. Hopefully this example makes sense. I try to keep it very, very simple. We'll go a little bit further into it later on. So now, one thing I will say is that some people calculate cost per sale by dividing the total marketing cost by total sales. That is an absolute good way of doing that. However, I want to warn you, that could also be inaccurate because if you don't filter out sales that were not generated by marketing, meaning sales that you didn't pay for, then you could be including that and it could be diluting your number. And so what I like to do is I like to do it this way because I only want to be using things that I pay for. This takes out referrals because I'm looking at it by channel. It takes out things that, I didn't necessarily pay for. So I know what my true cost per sale is. So once you've determined what your marketing efficiency is based on cost, the next thing we need to determine is how well those leads perform at generating revenue. Okay, so now this is actually pretty simple to figure out as well. I'm going to erase this. Again, you can always go back and look up the example. I use this same exact example in Grow, which is a book that I wrote that we'll put it at the bottom of the video here that you can go and grab the book if you want to. But to determine lead performance and to determine what you should be budgeting, you really need to understand what your revenue per lead is and what your revenue per sale is. And so we're going to call this RPL and RPS. Okay, so revenue per lead and revenue. I'm just having so much fun writing here. There we go. Revenue per sale. Now, you already have all the components that you need in order to figure this out. But these are important numbers to know because this is what's going to allow us to take it back to the budget so you can understand exactly what you should be budgeting for your growth goals. Okay. So now all we do, okay, if we want to figure this out, I'm going to go through an example here in a moment. If, for example, we say, hey, we want to generate, let's just say X number of revenue Once I know what my revenue per sale and my revenue per lead is, I can easily take this back to calculate what my budget is. So let's just take, for example, I'm going to do another example. Let's just say that I want to generate $200,000 in additional revenue for the upcoming year. So this is my target revenue, $200,000. And I want to understand how much money do I need to budget in my marketing budget in order to generate this. Now, let's make an assumption that my revenue per sale, and again, your revenue per sale is pretty easy. All you got to do is just say, hey, if I make a sale, this is how much revenue I get from that contract per year. So if you have a recurring program that you service 3-4 times a year and it's pulling back $500, then your revenue per sale is $500. In this case, we're going to use revenue per sale is going to be $315. Okay. And we're going to say that our cost per sale, again, for this example, all right, so our CPS, let's just assume that this is going to be $135. So now we have all the components that we need in order to figure out exactly how much money we need to put into our budget as far as figuring out what we need to be spending on marketing. And so the way this right here works, and I will put this over here, I'll put the formula over here, is we're going to take our target revenue, okay, and we're going to divide that by our revenue per sale, right? And that's going to give us the total number of sales we need to generate that year. Again, I'm not including cancels. You would have to add in cancels. If you had a cancel rate of say 20% or 10% or whatever, you would need to add this into that total number of sales number. But if you're doing recurring forecasting, again, I'm trying to keep this simple, but for now, it should make sense, right? Target revenue divided by revenue per sale. These are number of sales. Okay, pretty simple. So in this case, let's go back to our example. I'm going to take $200,000 and I'm going to divide it by $315. Okay, now what that's going to tell me is that I need 635 sales in order to make that $200,000 number. Okay, now the math is pretty simple. If I know that I need 635 sales in order to meet this number, then as far as my budget is concerned, once I know my CPS, now all I do is I take my number of sales. Oh goodness, Donnie. Number of sales, and then I multiply it by my CPS, my cost per sale. So in this case, this is going to be 635 sales, and I'm going to multiply it times $135. And so that's going to tell me that I need $85,725, I believe. That is how much money I need to budget. And I know for certain that roughly, if I spend 86 grand, if I put that in my marketing budget based on past performance, right? I know for certain that I'm going to hit that revenue goal of $200,000. Now I have validated for certain that I'm going to be able to do that. So again, a few disclaimers, make sure we go there, is if you got a recurring service business, you do need to account for lost revenue from cancellations. And this is pretty easy by adjusting your target revenue to account for lost revenue in calculating your budget, if that makes sense. So it should be pretty simple to figure that out. Again, you can just look at customer count, look at your cancel rate, get a number, and just add that into your total number of sales. Now, just to recap all of this, right? To figure out exactly what I need to be budgeting, right? The first thing I need to do is I need to determine what my growth goal is. How much revenue do I want to create for the upcoming year? The second thing that I need to do is I need to calculate my revenue per sale, right? To get the number of sales needed. And all I need to do for that, is revenue per sale is what is the cost of a recurring unit, or how much revenue do I get per recurring unit? And And then after that, number of sales needed times my CPS, and that gives me my budget. So, a few disclaimers that I want to make sure that I put in this video, that past performance doesn't always guarantee future performance, right? This is nothing more than a mathematical way of ensuring that what you've got in the budget, there's enough there based on past performance that it's going to get you to your growth goal, right? Because the one thing that we didn't talk about in this video is that what happens when your marketing budget goes over what you have in profit, but you want to grow that fast anyway. Well, then you need to go back and look for cash or try to fund an additional source of funding. And you may have that, right? Or again, you may be very conservative and you say, hey, look, I really don't want to go over 10%. At least now you know what you can expect using this method in terms of growth, right? The other thing about I won't say this as a disclaimer, but it's more about a nice way of using this method, is that if you are cash strapped, right, meaning that you're having to bootstrap all of your own growth, well, a really good method to use is just don't go over a cost per sale that's over your initial service price. And that way, you're basically cash flow neutral as you're growing. And just anytime you're looking at marketing channels, you push that channel all the way up to that initial service price, and you're basically growing for free. The other thing that makes this really, really nice is if you calculate this, I'd say no less than weekly. At Triangle, we do it hourly. We look at this daily. We look at this, when I say this, I'm talking about our cost per sale. So we make adjustments based on weather. We make adjustments based on what's happening in the market. Right now, we're in the middle of the coronavirus, right? I mean, it hasn't had that much of an impact. But the fact is that it's not like you're just saying, well, it's 8% of my budget, and so I just got to spend it. Like, you can be very, very proactive and not reactive using this method. And so the method is a little bit more involved. You can see it's not the 3 seconds that it takes to just run 1% off my revenue, but it's still, the math's pretty straightforward. The key, and this is a big part of this, the key to all of this is having really good tracking in place so that you know for certain what your CPS is, what your CPL is, and ultimately can make better decisions in your marketing on how to grow your company. So that's that. Hopefully this all made sense. If you want to know more, I have a book that walks through several examples on how to calculate this and how to do it. It's called the Grow IMS. The book should be in the link below. We also have a nice spreadsheet that you can use that calculates all this for you. You just put in a few numbers and it'll calculate your revenue per sale, also calculate what your budget should be. Again, just to reiterate, the key is to have and really know your numbers, and also have the infrastructure to capture this information automatically. Again, I'm Donnie Shelton with Coalmarch. Our company is linked below. We are experts in home service marketing. We have a platform called Sprout where you can automatically capture this kind of data and track all of your leads. We can completely integrate it in with your CRM as well as with Google Analytics. We can provide you with real-time cost per sale to help you make better marketing decisions, which ultimately, and our goal is to help you grow your business smarter as well as faster. So I hope you found this video helpful. If you did, click the bell to subscribe to our channel so that you'll be notified of future videos as we roll them out. And with that, we'll see you next time. Thank you very much.